Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Chava. I am a life coach and practitioner of Chinese medicine, and I was asked to answer a question about grief and grieving and basically how the whole process works from the perspective of Chinese medicine, which I think a lot of people think of Chinese medicine as being only about acupuncture, or maybe acupuncture and nasty herbal formulas that no one actually wants to drink. And well, that is certainly a large part of it. And it's, I think, maybe the majority of what people are familiar with in the West. Traditionally, Chinese medicine was the medicine of the culture. And so it was relevant to all the different aspects of life, of situations where people would need help. And so it also has a lot to say about mental health, about processing emotions. There's the psychology of Chinese medicine. There's a theory of personality types and emotional balance. And so today we're going to get into a little more of that side of things. And yes, so grief. Most of the emotions in Chinese medicine's terminology do not translate well into English, because the conceptual space that is taken up by the concept of a certain emotion only very roughly overlaps with the conceptual space that's called by the name. It's called by a name in English. And so in this example, when we say grief in English, we're talking about one very specific thing. We're talking about a sense of loss and maybe of sadness and a feeling that something is missing. And well, we do have in the Chinese medicine concept of the emotional spectrum that includes grief. We do have this concept of a sense of grief, of loss, of missing something, but it's part of a wider emotional spectrum that also includes, for example, gratitude and the ability to appreciate things and the ability to value things, and even the ability to make value judgments or to determine the quality of something or the desirability of something, because that mental and emotional capacity to evaluate something and see, is it good? Is it good for me? Do I want it? Do I value it? Do I appreciate it? Is necessary, both in order to appreciate the things that we have in life, which we could call gratitude, and to appreciate the things that we don't have anymore, the things that we've lost, and that we would call in English grief. And so I know that when people are grieving, sometimes we feel like we just wish it would go away. We wish we didn't need to feel that pain, that we didn't need to suffer this sense of loss. And I think for me, at least, it's helpful to remember that it's part and parcel with our ability to appreciate life and to value things, and to appreciate the goodness in the world and the goodness in the people around us and the things that we have. They can't be separated. You can't have one without the other. We can't appreciate what we have without feeling sorry when we lose it. And we can't, the suffering through the sorrow and the mental anguish when we lose something is an expression of how much we value it and how much we appreciate it and how much we see the goodness that's there. And so those are kind of two ends of the spectrum, two sides of the coin. And I think that when we're dealing with grief, when we're working through grief, one of the ways in Chinese medicine that you can deal with an emotion is you can try to see the other side of the coin, because each painful emotion, each difficult emotion has a positive side. It has something associated with it that brings us joy, or brings us or connects us to the world and to the people around us. And so one of the ways that we can work with grief is we can try and see, we can respect the fact, we can respect our grief, and we can feel our grief. We can also appreciate what it means. And what it means is that we had something positive, and we have the ability to appreciate what we've lost, to appreciate the person or the situation or the thing that we don't have anymore. And you know, to look on that ability to value and appreciate what we're grieving, and not just to get sucked down into the feeling of the loss of it. Okay, that felt heavy to me. I don't know how it felt to you. So I feel like we need to talk about something a little more dynamic now. So I want to talk about the process of grieving, which might not be less heavy, but we are going to talk specifically about how we avoid getting sucked down into that place of just sitting with what we've lost. So in traditional Chinese psychology, I'm going to say, in Chinese medicine, where Chinese medicine is holistic and we look at all different parts of the person. So in Chinese medicine, we don't really feel the need to distinguish between the psychological aspects and the physical aspects usually. But okay, so looking at the psychology of grief from the perspective of Chinese medicine, the process of grieving, and I'm going to use as an example losing a family member, because I've been through that, and I used it as an opportunity to really explore the grieving process from the inside, because that's the sort of person I am. One of my coping mechanisms is analytical learning. And that is helpful to me, because as long as I'm doing that, I can see that whatever I'm suffering right now, maybe I can turn that into something that could be helpful to someone else. And so it's a way that I use to add a positive aspect of some sort to difficult situations. So say we have lost someone close to us, or we've lost a relationship, even if the person didn't die, or we've lost a sense of security in the world, or we've lost a job that gave us part of our identity, any sort of real loss that's going to deeply impact us emotionally. What the psychological defense mechanisms of the body and of the mind and of the soul are supposed to do from a Chinese medicine perspective is it's all about protecting the heart, both physically and psychologically, emotionally, however you want to call it. There's a known phenomenon where widows and widowers are far more likely to suffer from heart attacks within the first year after their spouse died than the average person of the same age and health, general health status. The physical heart can actually be affected by severe shock and trauma. And the other thing that can happen, again, from the Chinese medicine psychological perspective, is that if the heart gets, it's like if the heart gets shocked, gets hit by an emotion that's too hard and moving too fast for the heart to cope, is we can lose our ability to feel connected to other people. We can lose our ability to feel joy. We can lose our ability to feel that we belong in society, or lose our ability to interact with other people. So that we could probably call clinical depression, or a rough equivalent to some types of clinical depression in modern modern English parlance. And so the goal of the psychological defense mechanisms are to stop the incoming negative emotion, or whatever emotion, the incoming strong emotion that will cause a shock, from hitting the heart directly, and from either causing physical damage to the actual muscle of the heart and to the blood vessels, or from causing this spiritual heart attack, this disconnection, this inability to live life normally going on. And so what happens is that the heart and our ability to feel joy and our ability to feel connection and our ability to feel like we're really part of life kind of gets disconnected, and all the other emotions and all the other mental capabilities to cope kind of move forwards and build a wall around the heart. They're protecting the heart by absorbing some of the strength of the emotion, and kind of like, we can't stop it. We can't stop the loss from hitting us in the heart, but if we slow it down enough, it's not going to be a dangerous shock. It's going to be hard to cope with. We're going to have to reassess our lives and our positions without this relationship. But that's something that people can do. It's something that we're born needing to be able to do, as long as the shock isn't too great. And so usually the first thing that happens is the heart gets disconnected. The heart gets kind of like walled off, it gets blocked. And so you can kind of have this numb feeling. And then the first emotion that responds, or the first psychological coping mechanism that responds, is often actually the deepest instincts, the deepest survival instincts that we have. It's kind of like we fling up the fastest reaction, the coping mechanism with the fastest reaction time, which has to be the coping mechanism that ensures our survival, right? It's the fight, freeze, whatever. You know what I mean, I hope. Fight, flight, freeze. Our ability to feel fear, our ability to flinch, our ability to run away. So that's the emotion with the fastest reaction time, or the coping mechanism with the fastest reaction time. It kind of gets thrown up to make a wall between us and the incoming shock of the grief, of the loss, and it just gets shattered. It gets torn apart, because that's not what it's for. It's trying to do a job that it's not meant to do. And then you can end up with people who, were disconnected emotionally, and they don't really have a connection to their sense of danger, their sense of, what you should and shouldn't do in order to stay safe. So you get people who are just so dazed that they step out into the street without looking both ways. And actually in the Jewish culture, I say that people who have lost a close family member, people who are going through a grieving period, should not do any dangerous activities for the first 30 days, because they're just going to inherently have bad luck with dangerous situations. Which after, again, the opportunity to witness myself and my family going through the grieving process, I think makes a lot of sense. I interpreted it to mean you are going to be really stupid when it comes to protecting yourself, because you're just disconnected from that part of existence. So yeah, don't do anything that requires you to have fast reaction time, or to really be completely aware of your surroundings. You're just not capable of it, because again, you kind of sacrificed that capacity to protect yourself, to protect your ability to have to rebuild your life in the future, and it's going to come back. You're going to recollect your ability to be afraid, to run, to freeze, to be aware of your surroundings. It's going to come back, but it gets kind of shocked, or it gets shattered, and it takes a while for it to piece itself back together. Interestingly enough, the other side of the fear, of the instinctive bodily physical fear and safety reflexes, is our sexual drive, right? Because we have to keep ourselves alive, and we have to pass on our genes. This is what our most basic instincts are. And so some people can completely lose their sex drive as a result of grief, but it is also very common for people to feel the need to have sex, to have that physical connection with another person, in order to work through their grieving process. And again, I'm mostly familiar with Jewish traditions because I'm Jewish, but it is considered normal and in fact a positive act for someone who has lost a family member, a married person who has lost a family member other than their spouse, to have sex during the period of mourning, because it reconnects you to life and to physicality. And so if you have that drive, that's normal. It's considered normal, at least in a variety of cultures, evidently. And it's your body trying to rebuild that capacity to connect to the here and now, and to feel connected to this chain of survival or of life. Okay, so that's step one. That's step one. If, you know, in most cases, again, it's going to depend on, not again, I think this is the first time I'm saying it in this video, it's going to depend on how, you know, what resources you have available. Each person is going to use the resources that they have. And each person is different. Each person has been through different things, and each person will have different support. But in many cases, that's the first step, is that shock, that trauma just hits us in our survival instincts, and we end up kind of becoming disconnected emotionally because the heart's disconnected, and also kind of disconnected from the physical animal world of, you know, eat or be eaten, because our basic instincts have been sacrificed temporarily to help keep us safe. So then the next players that come forwards are the feeling of grief that we described before, the feeling of loss, and at the same time, hopefully, the appreciation for the good that we had. So that gets hit, and the problem is, you know, and we have to feel it. We have to feel the grief. We have to feel the loss. We have to come to terms with it. But if we sit with it too long, there's the danger that we're going to get sucked in to that sense of loss. And I know people who are like this, and I'm sure you probably know some people or have heard of people who lost a child and never got over it, or, you know, people who just live in their sense of loss and they lose the ability to see the good that's still around them. So in order to prevent that happening, we're going to sit with the sense of loss, assuming we're healthy and we're balanced and we have enough resources. We're going to sit with the sense of loss as long as we can cope. And then it's like our feeling of grief and of loss is going to go, I can't cope anymore. You know, here's the hot potato, who can take it? And the next player that steps forward should be our anger. Okay, so that feeling that something's not right, that this shouldn't have happened, that something needs to change, it shouldn't be this way, is what's going to step forward. It's going to take the shock. It's going to help of the grief of the loss, and it's going to help bleed off some of the emotional volatility, I think, some of the strength of that emotion through action. Because what anger really is anger is the feeling that something's not right, something needs to change. And if it's healthy anger, I should do something, right? If it's not, I should do something, then you're either just frustrated and angry because things aren't right and you can't change them, or you're trying to repress the anger because you don't feel like it's your place to interfere with the situation. Neither of those are really great. But if you can find something in the world that isn't right and that you can change, then that gives you an action that you can do to help burn off, to use up some of this energy, some of the energy of the emotion that you're still trying to protect your heart from, so you don't get too big a shock. And so a lot of people, when they're dealing with grief, well, I'm sorry, I have a soaking wet cat on my computer. Someone's been playing in her water bowl. Oh, hopefully that was a bit of comic relief. Oh, there's footprints everywhere. MJ, what did you do? Sorry about that. Okay. A lot of people, after experiencing a loss, if they're able to, if they have the emotional resources, again, will respond by trying to do something to make the world better, right? To fix something. They start a foundation that tries to treat the disease that took their child, or they give money to charity in the name of whoever they've lost. Or if you lost your job due to something that wasn't your fault, maybe trying to change the law to protect other people so they don't go through the same thing. If we can use the energy of this emotion to act, and to act in a way that improves the world, that changes something that needs to be changed, that's a way that we can burn off. Again, I see it as a very like action mobile metaphor. We need to burn off, we need to use the emotion, we need to roll that ball around and burn off the kinetic energy, and just put a lot of friction in the way, because again, we need to slow it down enough that it actually that we can absorb it into our heart without being hit too hard and without being too badly shocked. Okay, so the anger is going to hold the emotion until either it can't anymore because it's in danger of becoming just overly aggressive, shouting at people, or until you're exhausted because doing things, planning, starting, giving to charity, starting foundations, it takes energy, and you don't have so much energy because all of your energy is caught up with trying to cope with this incoming shockwave. And so once the anger starts getting burned out, starts getting tired, it can't hold it anymore, or it gets over energized and you start lashing out and snapping at people, then again, the anger passes the hot potato back to the grief, and you can go from being snappy and angry with the people around you, or with the person who went off and died, or whatever, excuse me. You go from experiencing the anger back to experiencing the feeling of loss and of grief, and again, appreciating the person or the situation or the thing, and regretting its loss. And the grief and the anger are going to pass the strength of the emotion. They're going, or they're going to take turns stepping forwards to block the incoming shockwave until it's burned off enough that the heart can cope with it. And then what mediate, and so once it's once the emotion has been processed enough that the heart can deal with it safely, that's when you become less numb. And that's often when people really start to have like that good healthy cry, the cry that's actually letting emotion out and that's releasing some of the pressure from inside. Because the heart needs to feel the emotion, it needs to feel the loss, it needs to feel what's changed in order to process it. But it can only start that processing once the shock of the loss has been pre-processed, has been dealt with, has been worn down enough that we can really experience it emotionally and psychologically without there being actual risk. And so that's kind of the process according to Chinese psychology. We have this protective numbness that we protect ourselves with until enough processing has happened that we can really allow ourselves to safely feel the emotions. One more thing I wanted to say is that all of this mediation of the passing of the strength of the emotion back and forth between the grief and the anger and the need for change, or rephrase it and say the way the grief and the anger take turns putting themselves forward as a protective shield in front of the heart, the thing that mediates and allows all of the other coping mechanisms to cooperate, and that the kind of allows communication between them and enables the transition from one to the other, is mediated by what's called the earth energy. which does not have a good translation into English. It really depends on context. But the earth represents routines and security and safe foundations and our home and our family, and knowing someone has our back, and knowing, you know, there's going to be food on the table 3 times a day at regular times. All of that boring life stuff, the stronger it is, the easier time the rest of your coping mechanisms will have coordinating among themselves, and the less likely you are to be sucked down, to be stuck in one of them, to be sucked down into the grief, to get stuck in the rage, to be too badly shocked. And so again, in Jewish culture, when a family has experienced a loss, it's the neighbors and the community's responsibility to make sure that there's food on the table 3 times a day and that they eat. It's the community is responsible for taking care of all of the really basic day-to-day things, coming in and washing dishes after they eat, you know, taking care of whatever needs to be done, picking up the mail, you know, all of the boring life stuff. And when someone else can come in and help do that, then that gives you more support from the outside, because it's not, you know, if you have healthy routines in place and you have a supportive family and you feel like you have a firm foundation under your feet, then you're going to be in a better position to deal with shocks. But whether you have that or whether you don't, you can still get that support from outside of you if there are people who can step up and they can do it. So just, yeah, really don't forget about the importance of the boring stuff, of the routine, of eating meals at regular times, of going to bed at the same time, even if you're not going to sleep. All of the boring stuff is what lets all of the huge emotional drama play out safely and in as healthy a manner as possible. Okay, I feel like this is maybe the heaviest video I've done so far, which I guess was inevitable given the content. I hope it was helpful. I hope that it was at the very least interesting. If you have any more questions, if anyone has any more questions, feel free to let me know. I can do a follow-up if need be. If you want to find out more about emotions in general in Chinese medicine, I have another video, which I think is called Chinese Medicine, Emotions and Motivation or something like that. I'll find it and I will add a link to it in the notes. And if you want to watch something lighter, but still about the importance of that stability and that foundation, I have a video called The Spiritual Importance of Gingerbread, which talks about ways that people can improve or increase their own earth energy during times of change, which might be of interest. I'm saying way too often, so I'm going to stop this video. Take care, all of the best, and I hope to see you again. If you have any questions, let me know. Bye.